As a leader, I'm way more focused on getting clarity on who you are and then helping you self-manage. Feeling like they're a part of something and getting to be in flow or in the zone as much as possible towards some common good that people care about. You almost feel guilty that you get paid to do some of these things. And that is what we're looking for, is if we can get people to levels where they're in the zone more often, we're never going to hit 100%. I want to make sure that you're doing something that you love. If you're away from your family as much as you are working, I want to make sure it's an amazing fit. And if it's not with Kolbe Corp, we're going to help you find something where you thrive. When you really think about, if I care about an individual, I want to understand their strengths and bring that out in them versus trying to change them and put everyone into some kind of mold. We get paid for results, not for effort. And we are going to say yes to a lot of things. And it seems a little chaotic and crazy, but rooted in it is making sure you care enough about your people to say, I care enough to understand more about you and what you need, and then put them in a role that they love.
Welcome to the Culture from the Heart podcast on the From the Heart Business Network. In a business world where employees and customers crave authenticity and trust, hosts Larry Levine and Darrell Amy are on a mission to find and showcase heart-centered executives and the companies they lead. You are about to hear an inspiring conversation with a visionary leader that's bringing heart into the workplace, empowering employees, serving their clients, and uplifting communities, all to create true success. This is Culture from the Heart. The movement starts here. Let's begin.
Welcome to Culture from the Heart. I'm your co-host, Darrell Amy, here today with Larry Levine, and we're joined by Amy Bruske. She's the president and integrator at Kolbe Corporation, the world leader in identifying and applying instinctive strengths in human behavior. Amy, it's great to have you here.
It is great to be here. Thank you.
Oh, we're going to have a great time, Darrell. I already know we will.
I have no doubt about that. And as we get started, Amy, the question we ask every guest on Culture from the Heart is, what does Culture from the Heart mean to you?
Oh, gosh. Okay. Well, obviously the word heart is in there. And I love those of you that know EOS. We run on EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. And I love that Gino Wickman once said, put the love in it in whatever you're doing in the workplace. Specifically to me, it means making sure that we allow people freedom to be themselves. So when you really think about, if I care about an individual, I want to understand their strengths and bring that out in them versus trying to change them and put everyone into some kind of mold. And the good news is by doing that, you're actually creating a diversity of how people solve problems and make decisions that is actually more effective for your business. But rooted in it is making sure you care enough about your people to say, I care enough to understand more about you and what you need, and then put them in a role that they love.
Oh, this is good. And I want to hone in on that word love, because I think sometimes that word in the context of culture inside of a company, they don't go hand in hand. Mm-hmm. So walk us through, Amy, what does love look like inside your company as you start building out such a wonderful culture? I'm just curious.
Sure. I mean, I really think it's making sure we're aligned on values, but having enough care for each person that we can be our authentic selves. So it starts with being a little vulnerable. I know that's an overused term as a leader, but that we are pretty transparent. We make sure people really understand us and who we are. We admit when we make mistakes. And then we have enough love for our employees to make sure that we are fully committed to them. They're the base of everything that we do. We are committed to a mission at Kolbe Corp. So we're really mission based. And so love is making sure that people, they care about that they love to come to work every day because of what we do. And there's a lot of people who will say, well, I can do the job. You can, but should you? I want to make sure that you're doing something that matters to you and you love. If you're away from your family as much as you are working, I want to make sure it's an amazing fit. And if it's not with Kolbe Corp, we're going to help you find something where you thrive. I mean, that's what love is to me, is not just having a bunch of cookie cutter people, but saying, I care about you enough to make sure that this is working. If it's not, we have a good conversation about that. Let me help you with something where you can thrive. That's the goal. I mean, that's our goal worldwide. So we got to practice that internally.
Yeah, I like that. It's so interesting if you think about culture. A lot of times, obviously, we hear about mission, vision, values in particular of the company. But I think what's interesting that you're bringing to the conversation here is yes, we have the mission and the values of the company, but then we also have the individual. Mm-hmm. And how's that individual wired, and what makes their heart come alive, and all of that. And it seems like the intersection of those two things creates a really beautiful foundation for great culture.
Yeah. And in our experience, people can achieve high levels of performance, but in order to really sustain high levels of performance and get to the point where you're, the phrase in the zone, or where you're in flow, where time just flies by. Like anyone listening to this, think about the one or two things you could do all day long. Time flies by. You almost feel guilty that you get paid to do some of these things. And that is what we're looking for, is if we can get people to levels where they're in the zone more often. We're never going to hit 100%. I mean, frankly, most people will tell me they're at 20, 30%. And even just raising that a little bit is huge. But that is when then you have reduced levels of stress and you can really sustain these high levels of performance. So as a leader, it's really in my best interest to make sure people are in that zone as much as possible. Then they get more done. Everybody wins. And so when I keep saying someone loves their job, it's not about all the perks. We talk about let's have games and let's have free food and all this stuff. And those things are fabulous, but that's not what really keeps people going. It's feeling like they're a part of something and getting to be in flow or in the zone as much as possible towards some common good that people care about.
It's almost like you have to unpack as a leader what makes your people come alive.
Yeah. Yeah. And, we really look at a whole person. I think the model that helps leaders the most is looking at a 3 parts of the mind model. And by the way, Aristotle and Plato talked about this. This is not something that Kolbe Corp created, but there's these 3 dimensions, and you really have strengths in all 3. The first one everybody knows, and that's cognitive. That's your skills, your ability, your experience. You're just good at some things, right? You just have a superior skill at some things. Second one is about affect, or what's called personality type. Like, what do you care about? What do you value? What motivates you? All of that falls under those kind of personality traits. And you have strengths in that too. And then the third part of the mind is really what we specialize in Kolbe. And it's called the cognitive part of the mind, but it really means how do you take action? So you have a natural way of making decisions, solving a problem, and executing. So that's the doing. So think of it as the thinking, the feeling, and the doing. Where something's not working out, think about one person in your organization right now that's maybe a challenger. They have this amazing potential and they're not quite hitting it. We use that as our checklist and say, is this a thinking, feeling, or doing problem? And just make sure we can hone in and get as much alignment in all 3 dimensions of the mind. And then you've got like magic.
I really think this concept of putting people in a place where they can enter flow, be in the zone as much as possible. And we've all seen the statistics about employee engagement. It's dismal, it's depressing, and all of that. Having a culture that is intentionally putting people in a place where they can literally be fully engaged is a really beautiful perspective, Amy.
Yeah, no, I think that's, and it's a little pie in the sky, but it's doable. We see companies do it every day. If that's the focus as a leader, I'm way more focused on getting clarity on who you are and then helping you self-manage so that I don't have to micromanage how you're getting anything done. My job is to define, here's the end result I'm looking for. This is what a quality output, or here's where we're going. And then you have freedom to get there in whatever way is most natural for you. But as human beings, we often think that our way is the best way, right? This is true in parenting too. I don't know if you guys are parents, but any of us who went through this as parents, your kids are not hardwired exactly the same way you are. And some of them might be, but oftentimes they're not. And so the more we can say, here's what excellence looks like. Let me help you find the freedom to be yourself and get there in whatever way matters to you most. It's great because then as a leader, I don't have to micromanage how you're getting there. I can trust that you can self-direct this mental energy that you have to solve problems, right? It's this finite amount of mental energy to get stuff done. What are you going to do? So I'm going to help you at a higher level. You're going to be managing on a daily basis.
Very cool. Very cool. We're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. And when we come back, we're going to continue this great discussion with Amy Bruske. Stay tuned. We'll see you in a moment. Let's be honest, finding the right people and building the right culture, that's the holy grail for every leader.
That's why we recommend Titus Talent, because they don't just fill seats, they help you build teams that thrive.
With their partnership plans, you get more than just hiring help. You get a committed team by your side that helps you attract top performers and retain them.
They bring strategy, data, and a human touch to talent optimization. No guesswork, just results.
So if you're ready to invest in your people and create a culture where everyone wins, head over to culturefromtheheart.com/talent to learn more.
That's culturefromtheheart.com/talent. Your culture is your competitive advantage. Design it with Titus Talent.
And we're back. Thanks for sticking with us. We've got a great conversation going with Amy Bruske, president and integrator at Kolbe Corporation. Amy, I loved what we were talking about before the break, which is really aligning people and where they're gifted and how they're wired with the job. I'd love to hear, you guys at Kolbe do so much great work helping organizations with their culture, but what's the culture like inside your organization? If I came in and said, hey, what are some words that you wish your team would say to describe the culture at Kolbe, what would you say?
Okay, so first thing that comes to mind is I think I go back to our values, and our number one value is just mission driven. In other words, we are really focused on helping people discover their instinctive strengths and then put that into play whatever way that matters for them most, right? And so knowing that, it helps us make decisions really easily. So we need people who are all about making a difference in people's lives and knowing that sometimes that's hard. I mean, we take on a lot. We say yes to a lot of stuff. We're incredibly entrepreneurial too. So the second word I would think is problem solver. I remember Kathy Kolbe years ago, the founder of our organization, used to put ads in the paper that said, looking for problem solvers.
I love
and
it.
I just think if you thrive doing hard things, solving problems, being solution oriented, and understanding that we're an entrepreneurial businesses just operate a little differently, right? As we know, we get paid for results, not for effort, and we are going to say yes to a lot of things. And it seems a little chaotic and crazy, but it's all in service of the mission. And then the one that comes up a lot is being always improving. So always improving is a value that we have, and that is you come back from an event. So I just came back from a big event that we had out of town, and we were training people for 3 days. And yes, we spend some time celebrating what went well, but we immediately focus on what could we do better next time. And I think early in my career, I used to apologize a little bit for that because I'm like, okay, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. I got to step back. I got to remember to say what went well. But the more we've gotten the right people in the right roles, they immediately go to next time we could do this, right? That excites them instead of being frustrated. Like, why are we changing it? So this always improving mindset is huge. I have in my home office, I have a little saying on my wall that says always grateful, never satisfied. And I think that kind of defines not only me, but how we're feeling all the time. So there's this, it's invigorating to be here. It's exciting. It's fun. But it serves a purpose. So we want people here who are purposeful, like that you really have a purpose to your life. And this is a part of it. You have this huge life that encompasses a lot of different things. But people who are motivated for that, I think that's a big part of our culture. That's who sticks around. We have people who've been here 25 years. I've got someone coming up on 20, another 25. So the people that stick around, this is a great fit for them.
Wow.
Oh, this is good, and I want to see if we can go back to the word that you use. You use mission driven, and actually use mission a couple of times. Walk us through, what was the inspiration behind being so mission driven? Because you had mentioned that people would use the word mission driven. What's the inspiration behind all of this?
Well, that goes way back. That goes back to Kathy Kolbe, the founder of our company, who's actually very recently passed away. But we're going on 50 years, and she was raised by someone named E.F. Wunderlich. So if any of you have heard of the Wunderlich personnel test, it's a test that's still used in the workplace. The NFL has used it for years. And it's a cognitive test. It's an intelligence test. So she grew up in this testing space. But she kept saying to her dad, I know a lot of really smart people who don't get a lot done. There's something missing in this, right? And he said, my life's work is about the cognitive. I challenge you to go figure out what else is out there. And so early on, she worked with gifted education for kids. So she loved the kids space. These were kids that were highly intelligent, but she kept seeing that there was something in the way that they solved problems that was uniquely theirs. So she said, I got to figure this out. But from the beginning, working with children and realizing how the school system is so driven toward one kind of learner, she started a mission then to say individuals are only going to thrive if we can figure out their unique needs. So she kind of kicked off a mission. It eventually went into the workspace. And since then, we had to figure out a way to start saying no to things. And it was really interesting. We used to have a meeting every year that was the what are we not going to do this year meeting. Seriously. Instead of the what, because we would say yes to everything, right? Anything that would come along, any shiny object. We said, how are we going to decide what to say no to? And the most obvious thing was there's got to be a guiding light to this. And it was the mission to help improve people's lives. And so since then, our numbers, even looking at what's our scorecard look like and what do we care about, the number one thing is lives empowered versus revenue. So revenue is, of course, important. Profitability is critical so that we can keep going further in the mission and changing lives. But once we really realized, no, we're really on a mission. This isn't just being a for-profit company. We're not a nonprofit company. We're a for-profit company because we know that's how we can expand and change. So that really made a difference. And I have to tell you, Kathy, since you guys are experts in the sales field, we used to call her the queen of sales prevention. We used to say, oh my gosh, this client wants to hand us all this money when we were working more with like really major corporations. She said, they're not using it ethically. I'm walking away. And I got to see in real time what it looks like to live ethically in the workplace and really be mission driven. And so David Kolbe and I now own the company outright. We have for several years and run it together. So he's my stepbrother. We're a family business at the core. And it's just being mission driven makes it easy for us to make decisions. Yeah.
This 50-year history is amazing, and just seeing how this has continued into another generation over decades. How do you keep this fresh? I mean, this is 50 years. How do you keep, as a leader, keep this vision and mission fresh in the organization?
Yeah, that's a good question, because maybe because I'm more innovative in what I do. Both David and I initiate in Quick Start, which means we just naturally brainstorm and change things up. That might make it a little bit easier. But the always improving helps. Like, what are we going to do differently? We can't just rest on our laurels. And I do think that our clients push us a lot. So we have over 850 consultants worldwide that are trained in Kolbe and use it either inside an organization or as consultants. And they want a lot. They're like, hey, how about this idea for this product? So we see them as our partners in this. And I do think we're constantly looking for what is the next best way that we can help people solve problems. And if you ask our team, they probably say, keeping it fresh, man, we got to slow down because we have too many ideas to implement is part of the problem. But there's a balance, right? We're never going to risk losing the company. We are not risk takers to the extent of just let's put everything into this one thing. And if it fails, the company's not here anymore. We've never been those kind of entrepreneurs. But we get bored easily. So I just think the needs of people in the workplace keep changing. And so there's always a place for us to keep adjusting to, adapting, trying to anticipate what the needs are going to be moving forward. I guess I've never thought of that question. That's a good question.
Love it. Well, you're listening to Culture from the Heart. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I'm going to talk about the advice Amy would share with other leaders who'd like to implement this.
For many CEOs, sales feels like a black box.
You've got visibility into marketing metrics, financial dashboards, operational KPIs. But when it comes to the sales team, it feels like guesswork.
That black box, it's costing you, because if you can't see what's happening, you can't fix what's broken or fuel what's working.
That's where the Sales Index steps in. It opens the black box of sales and shows you the real story. Who's thriving, who's struggling, where they need help, and how much revenue is being left on the table.
You'll get clear, actionable data on sales behavior, mindset, and team culture, so you know exactly where to invest and how to drive growth.
So stop flying blind. Go to salesindex.ai and mention Culture from the Heart for 10% off an index of your sales team.
Sales Index, because when sales stops being a black box, you start unlocking real sales results.
And we're back. Let's continue this great discussion. Amy, this whole concept around culture and thinking about how people are wired, how they're designed. I'm curious, what advice would you give to other leaders who are listening in going, man, I'd love this level of engagement in our organization. I'd love to see this kind of flow and people being in the zone.
Right. So it starts with us as leaders making sure we're not just paying lip service to the fact that diversity in getting things done matters, because there's actually a lot of really good research around groupthink is dangerous if we all come from the same backgrounds, have the same way of approaching things. And we have some really interesting research about needing a diversity in problem solving methods in order to have a really successful team. So it starts with not just saying, hey, I care about your unique strengths, let's talk about those or discover those, but we got to find an outlet for that too, right? So we often say there's kind of three different things to look at. One is each individual has to get some clarity around their own strengths. And whatever that is, I know a lot of people have taken assessments in the workplace. There's a lot of great assessments out there to just understand yourself a little bit more. When you get clarity, all of a sudden there's this different lens. You see different interactions, you see problems in front of you in a different way, so that you stop trying to change yourself or beat yourself up or feel like that was a failure. There's just certain things you don't do naturally. You don't do them well. They're not your thing. You get a clarity that, hey, you're still responsible for end results. So I always tell leaders, this is not a cop-out. I can't tell the IRS, I don't really do details so close enough on my taxes, right? We're always going to be held accountable for some end result. But if I have the clarity on what just comes naturally to me and who I am, I can see things differently. I describe it as if ever worn glasses. I remember being in junior high and my mother taking me to the front door and putting some glasses on me and say, look across the street. And it was the first time I saw leaves, right? So it starts with that. And then once someone has clarity and a leader understands those strengths, now there's a commitment of this mental energy. So you have this energy to get things done. Well, it's finite. So you got to pick and choose how you're going to spend your time. And we all get told you got to say no to a bunch of things. But it becomes more clear what you should be saying no to and when to minimize working against that. And the third thing is, the third C is collaboration. It becomes really clear when do you need other people. So as a leader, you got to start thinking, do I need a clone of myself in this situation? Someone would do things just like me. And sometimes you do. Or do I need a true complement? And that complement, I got to understand, is going to drive me nuts. So like the two of you have amazing complementary strengths. And so understanding that, Larry should be doing some of the more strategy, detail kind of stuff. Darrell coming up with new ideas on how to do things. You're both going to do both of those things. But if you understand that, you will immediately know when should we work together and collaborate and when should we work independently toward shared goals, right? You take this piece, I take this piece. When we know that, we speed up how we're getting things done. You don't have to be figuring out who should be doing what on your team as a leader if we're all clear on what's our lane, right? I always say David Kolbe and I work really well together because we stay in our lane. We know this is my stuff, this is his stuff. Man, does that make it quicker. We can give up that I don't have to be good at everything. So I do think as leaders is just start by just getting clarity with these people. And let me give you one activity for everyone out there. Here's one thing that you can do. Getting to know your people is as simple as every meeting have one quick question maybe that you that you go through. So one of the most powerful things is just one tip for working with me. So I always tell leaders, hey, next meeting, go around, have everyone think about this and say, what's one tip for working with me? I've had people who've worked together over 20 years say, oh my gosh, I've never heard that person say that. I've been doing the opposite of what they're telling me, And the other thing is, when I'm stressed, I need. So that's another great little activity. When I'm stressed, I need. I found out that I'm doing the exact opposite for someone here when they're stressed than how I would need things, right? So it's just that reminder to constantly have really good introspection, communication, understanding others' needs, but then make those individuals responsible to get their needs met. So as leaders, I'm not going to take that on and make sure I do everything to make sure you get those needs met. It's a little trickier with our younger employees sometimes, right? They haven't quite learned how to self-manage enough, and we might have to help that a little bit more. But just because I'm saying as a leader, get clear, doesn't mean then you're responsible for that. It's just understanding enough so that you can put them in a position to succeed. So quit trying to change yourself as a leader. Go figure yourself out first. Because as leaders, we deserve the freedom to be ourselves and not be working against what's natural all the time. And then make sure the people around you get that too. And that's when people thrive.
Yo, I really like this. I just want to I got to circle back to clarity because I'm a massively high clarity guy.
Yeah.
But just through your just through your level of expertise, do you find that clarity, if you look at it through a clarity lens, changes based on the generations who are looking at this? Because I'd just be curious because maybe somebody who's older or more wiser is going to look at clarity through a different lens than somebody who's maybe less tenured.
Yeah, I would say, okay, so yes and no. So on one hand, yeah, I do think your life experience gives you more lessons along the way to say, well, that was terrible. Well, I hated that. That didn't work. You can already, that experiential learning, you just can't replace that, right? That's really valuable. At the same time, I think that because, this instinctive need you have to take action and solve problems it's universal. We don't see any differences between 20-year-olds and 80-year-olds in all of our research, different gender, age, race. But by age, I think that you do have to help a little bit, put them in situations where they can experience some success along the way and develop some confidence for sure. But I find that even when I ask really young people, including like junior high kids, tell me what's easy and what's not. What are the 2 tasks you love to do and the 2 tasks you hate to do? They're already pretty clear on that, and you can start building on that. So you're right. The conversation, I think, is a little different. It's just easier for us, the older we are, to have learned along the way what works for us and what doesn't. But let me say the caveat to that is I think we get a little bit stuck in our ways, too. And what happens to some of us, this happened to me early in my career, is we get really skilled and good at some stuff that actually doesn't come natural to us. So I have people who are lawyers saying, oh my gosh, if I would have known this, I wouldn't have become this kind of lawyer, because you're just good at it, but you're not in the zone when you're doing it. And now you're kind of stuck in this position where you're, getting paid to work against your grain. So the generational thing is endlessly challenging and interesting to me. It really, I'm still learning. I don't know.
Well, we all are, and we've learned a ton here today. It's so fun for those who aren't watching on video, and of course, you can get Culture from the Heart on YouTube and LinkedIn, all of that. Across the bottom, next to each one of our names, is our Kolbe score, and we use Kolbe in our organization. We've been a part of many different groups and with clients that use the Kolbe scores. You'll be on the Zoom meeting and they have it there. And I think there's such a beautiful thing about that being in front of people all the time. So you can start to understand, hey, this is the person that I work with. This is the person I'm coming alongside. And even if I don't understand every aspect of what 3583 means without a little bit of thought, I know that you're different than me. And I think there's something just about that right there that is so powerful in creating a culture of diversity in terms of how people work. And it's a really beautiful thing.
Right. Oh, I love that. Yeah. It is not, 4 numbers is not meant to box you in, everybody. It's just meant to give you some insight into really, what is unique about you. So thank you. I love that.
I love it. Well,
Hey, Amy, it might box Darrell in, but that's just because Darrell's out there.
Well, hey, I just want to say a huge thank you for not only sharing your culture with us, but for all that you're doing, your organization to empower cultures and companies all over the world. You're a true inspiration, Amy. I really appreciate you sharing time with us today.
Of course. This was fun. Thank you both.
That's our pleasure.
Cool.
Thanks, Amy.
What a great conversation. And, as we wrap this up, I think just going back to the beginning of saying, hey, we want people to align with our values, but let's also understand the people on our team and how they're wired, how they work, where they get into flow. And I think this is a massive key to creating a culture of engagement.
It's just about what makes somebody come alive. And I love the whole thing about finding out where somebody's zone is and just help them just stay in the zone. Just imagine all the productivity of work that could happen from that.
That's right. Well, thank you to everybody who is sharing this show. We're on a mission to find the heart-centered organizations and their leaders. So if you know a CEO who fits that bill, just go to culturefromtheheart.com, nominate your CEO. We'd love to talk to them. We believe that culture is the heartbeat of every organization. And as Amy has reminded us, it's about understanding how the people on your team are wired. So thank you for joining us today on Culture from the Heart. Until next time, lead with your heart and watch your culture thrive.
Thank you for joining us on this journey to discover heart-centered leaders shaping extraordinary company cultures. To access a leader guide with notes from this week's episode, simply click the link in the show notes or visit us at www.culturefromtheheart.com. Do you know a CEO who's built a culture from the heart? We'd love to hear their story. Head over to www.culturefromtheheart.com and click the Nominate Your CEO button. Until next time, remember, great cultures start with the heart.